Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace reporting live here at BB King's here in New York City. Tonight, blessing the band stage here in New York tonight is saxophonist and keyboardist Boney James. In fact, he's on the heels of a brand new record he just released called The Beat, and features some of the great vocalists, including Raheem DeVaughn, as well as the Floacist from Floetry. This album, he dives into Latin music, and he was really inspired by the great Sergio Mendes, in which he pays homage to on this new CD. We sat down and talked about why he decided to really record a Latin-based project, as well as talk about his time as one of the most important session as well as background saxophonists in the late 80s, playing with the likes of Morris Day and the Time, as well as the Isley Brothers, Randy Crawford. The names go on and on. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the sounds of Mr. Boney James live here at BB King's here in New York City. Boney, it is an honor for me to just sit next to you. Welcome to New York, and congratulations on your brand new Concord record release, The Beat. Tell me about this project. I understand that you are going and investigating somewhat bossa nova and Latin music on this project.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about the direction I wanted to take with the record, and I had toyed with the idea of doing like a full-on Latin record over the years, and collected a bunch of songs that I loved. So I thought, well, I'll just try and do an arrangement of one of them. So I took this track, Batucada, that was originally recorded by Sergio Mendes in the 60s, and started messing around with the arrangement. And I for some reason, I just had this idea of, taking the bossa nova, the samba feel off and putting more of an R&B backbeat on it. And like it was just a big light bulb over my head. It's like, all right, I'll do a mashup of Latin and R&B rhythms for the whole record. So I got a lot of Latin stuff that has a little bit more of a hump than it normally would, and I've taken some straight R&B tracks like Missing You or even Make Her Love and put some more shaker or percussion on it than it would normally have. And so it's this sort of unique sound I was really proud of when I finished it.
You have some incredible special guests on here. You have the Floacist, who was with the group Floetry, and you also have a very, very dynamic R&B vocalist that's really been doing some things for the last couple of years, Raheem DeVaughn.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of both of those people, and it's such a great honor to have them agree to work on my project. Raheem, it was an amazing thing too, because I had finished working on the track and I thought this needs to be a vocal, maybe someone like Raheem DeVaughn could write something to this. And like almost right around that same time, I got an email from Twitter saying Raheem DeVaughn has started following you on Twitter. And so I started following him back, and I wrote him a direct message and say, hey, I got a track for you, would you want to work on it? So I sent it to him, and he's like, yeah, I like it, let me mess around with it. And I thought he was going to send me back like a demo, and we'd just kind of, work on it. But he sent me back this. He went in the studio and wrote the lyric and recorded all the vocals that ended up on the record in one night. So tremendous respect for him, and it's an actual hit on the R&B chart right now, which is a real blessing for a sax player in this day and age, with the rigid playlists and stuff like that. So I'm really grateful and proud of how that one turned out.
You also dive into, I would say he's next to James Brown, a major soul composer in his own right. Stevie Wonder's Don't You Worry About a Thing.
Yeah, well, I'm a huge Stevie Wonder fan, as anyone who's followed my career knows. I think this is probably the third Stevie Wonder song I've recorded over the years, and I just love his melodies, and a lot of times I just start to hear them in my head as if the saxophone was playing it. And this song was interesting too because like once I started on this whole Latin R&B tip, I remembered Stevie, of course, had done something very similar on Don't You Worry About a Thing, and with all the Spanish intro and the percussion he's got on there, and so I thought I would do my version of Stevie's version of that same thing.
You brought up something earlier in the interview about Sergio Mendes, who happens to be on the label also.
Right.
What is about Sergio's music that really kind of took Latin music and put such a contemporary twist even in the 60s? Because he and his group Brazil 66 really kind of broke ground doing some new music.
Yeah, it's always a mystery, I think, as to why something breaks into the popular consciousness or doesn't. I think there's lots of great music that hasn't broken through, and sometimes you just have great music that does, and I think Sergio's music was that. To me, I just love it because the melodies are so great, and the arrangements are so full of life and energy, and he, just great music, I think, just the bottom line, and luckily, for some reason, it caught on at that time, and I keep doing my thing and hoping my thing is going to blow up a little bit bigger than it is even now, Maybe I'll catch on one of these days.
you're back in what we call the beginnings, your origins. You were born in New Rochelle, New York, right?
Well, actually, I was born in Lowell, but grew up mainly in New Rochelle and lived there until I was in high school. My family moved to California.
Tell me how you got into music. I understand that about maybe 7 or 8 you started playing the clarinet.
Yeah, back in the day, everybody pretty much in school would sign up to learn how to play an instrument in band class. Unfortunately, the kids today don't really have that same opportunity. So I signed up to play trumpet, and we went to the store to get a trumpet, and all they had were clarinets. So I took one home, and 2 years later, there were so many clarinets in the band that the teacher needed a sax player, and it kind of leaned on me to switch. And as soon as I picked it up, though, I loved it and realized that it opened up a whole world of different kinds of music I could play.
I've read something very interesting about your background. When your family moved to Los Angeles, you hooked up and started playing with a lot of bands. In fact, you really got into a lot of fusion music at the time. And how did you develop into a saxophonist?
Well, there was just a lot of great music happening when I was in those formative years. When I was 13, 14, it was mid-'70s, and it was just a great time for music. People like Grover Washington Jr. and combining the R&B and the jazz music, and of course Stevie was in his prime, Earth, Wind and Fire, and Chick Corea, Pat Metheny, and all these great bands. It was Curtis Mayfield, and so much great music coming out at the time, and it just had a real big impact on me when I was in those sort of formative teenage years where music really means a lot to a lot of teenagers. And also I was playing the horn, so I was able to really connect with my love for music and my desire to make music.
You brought up Grover Washington Jr. and I think Grover and Ronnie Laws, and there's a couple of other people in that whole genre that really, in my opinion, never got the just due that they deserved. And tell me about their music in the 70s moving into the 80s, because at the same time FM radio was taking place, and then there was a genre called smooth jazz that evolved with it also.
Well, smooth jazz, I think, came much later. Definitely FM radio, I think, was more of an impact on me, because you could be listening to a radio station and they would play, some R&B, and then they would switch over and play some, contemporary jazz, we called it, or fusion, or whatever it was, and it was such a creative time and a freer time musically, especially at radio and in the music business. So that was a great impact. I'm still trying to carry on that tradition today, and bucking the trend and getting away with it as best I can. People like, of course, George Benson too had huge crossover success. Those records were great. Breezin' and Weekend in L.A. That stuff had a big impact on me too. So smooth jazz, I think, came along, I'm going to guess it was more towards the middle, late 80s, and I was just working as a sideman at that time, had really given up on trying to be a solo artist and was just glad to be making a living playing keyboards and sax with a lot of different bands. I toured with Morris Day and the Isley Brothers and Bobby Caldwell, and somewhere in there I started hearing some other people's records and thinking, well, maybe I should try and make a record too, and I really reapplied myself to trying to write my own songs, and luckily the smooth jazz radio was there as an outlet for me. But even from the beginning, I was always wanting to cross over to urban radio too, because I always considered myself more of an R&B based artist and not so much smooth. I liked having a little more edge to my thing, and luckily I'm very grateful smooth jazz radio embraced me and played me, and I was successful there, but I was able to also develop a different kind of fan base too.
That's interesting you brought that up, because you have a term that you have coined, and it really does kind of categorize your music. You call it urban jazz.
Well, I think someone else might have called it that, but I'll take it. I like that. I'd like to just call it Boney James music. and I hope that it's unique, and that, of course, there's a lot of cats, sax players that are playing contemporary sounding or R&B influenced music, but hopefully I have my own voice, and I think individual singers are allowed to have, even if they're in the same style, they each are seen as individuals, but for some reason instrumentalists don't get that same slack, so I keep fighting that one too.
Boney, one of the things I do on the Pace Report is I give every musician an opportunity to really break their ground as far as their genius, their work, and their career. And one of the things that I've really, really disliked about what happened with corporate radio is that it's all about the dollars, and smooth jazz radio avenues or outlets have just not been in existence over the last 4 or 5 years. Tell me how Boney James, you and some of the other musicians like the Dave Kazas and the Dave Marienthals have had to kind of really carry on with what you do and do well, but also reach out to the audiences.
Well, I'm very lucky that I have a fan base. You know, I sort of broke in at a time, and people sort of know me now. And it's interesting. I mean, I think even though there's not as many radio stations as there were, there are still some. And there's the internet radio, and there's satellite radio, and there's a lot of outlets where people seem to be hearing about the music. I mean, like I said earlier, the new record, The Beat, is #1 for 3 weeks on the Billboard Jazz chart. It's selling pretty good numbers, you know, so people are hearing about it somehow. Social media, you know, I mean, it's the same for musicians all over the place, you know. Radio and the music business has changed a lot, and everyone has to be a little bit more creative about how they're getting the word out about their music. So I kind of just take it in stride that the radio climate has changed. I'm grateful that I've got the Raheem DeVaughn single that's being played on the urban adult stations as well. So I'm just working it, and, you know, one day at a time, keeping my head down and just trying to do me, you know, and make great music and trust that people will find it. And it seems that so far so good, at least as far as I'm concerned.
One of the things I told you earlier, and I saw you in Detroit in the rain. Well, it was the VMV Smooth Jazz Festival, and I think it was you, Rick Braun, and I believe it was George Benson. And the one thing that I really, and I've seen you over many years, one of the things I really admire about you, Boney, is that every time people come to see you, people leave feeling very good. And it's just, you're very charismatic of what you play, and the people feel very, very touched when you leave. Tell me how you relate to your audience, because you have a serious fan base all over the country, if not the world.
Well, you know, I just love being up there on stage, playing my music with the band. It's such a gift to be able to do that, and I'm full of gratitude every night when I get up there to do it. It's just like, I can't wait to do it, and I think that spills out into the crowd, and people get full of that same spirit, you know, and the band is amazing. I mean, all the guys on the road with me now are playing on the new record, so the music sounds good, and we're having a good time, and there's just something wonderful about the experience of live music that you can't get that feeling anywhere else. And I think for me, what I guess, since I'm not out there watching it, is that they can feel our joy at doing it, and then they feel joyful too, and that's a real great thing to go to bed knowing that you had some impact on that.
Your nickname, Boney. It's very interesting how you got that nickname, but I want to go into how you got that and how it developed, because one of the most important parts of your career is the fact that you played background for Morris Day, like you said, and you played with the Isley Brothers, and you played with some other important R&B and soul acts. Tell me what that life was like.
Well, for a long time I was really happy just to be working as a musician. I had struggled for many years to break in. I delivered pizzas for a living while I was trying to break into the business. And when I got my first gig with Morris Day, I was just like so glad just to be doing it. But, I got to say, after a while I did get frustrated playing other people's music and really wanted to have people hear the music that was inside of me. But the Boney James thing came out about I was on my second professional job ever. It was with Randy Crawford. I think it was 1986. And Wayne Lindsay and he was the other keyboard player in the band. Wayne is the keyboard player on The Tonight Show now. And we were in Oslo, Norway at the time, and we were walking down the street, and I said, man, everything costs a fortune here. I just won't eat for the next couple of days, just joking around. And he said, oh, you'll get all skinny. I have to start calling you Boney James or something. And I said, don't call me Boney James, please. And, of course, that's how you get a nickname, and it just really spread. People liked calling me that for some reason. And now here we are all these years later, and that's my name.
Do you reflect now playing the music that you play now, that because you're playing a lot of R&B covers also, that goes back to your love for soul and R&B music?
Oh, totally. I mean, when I do a cover, it's just going to be a song that I love, and a lot of the songs from the mid 70s that excuse me, that had an impact on me as I was growing up, they're in my head, and I imagine them as if the saxophone is playing it. And I'm only going to do a cover if I feel like I can bring something unique to it and that I can inhabit the song as if it's my own. So I've had some pretty good luck with doing that,
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report. Reporting live here at BB King's here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank the talented Boney James for his time, as well as the staff and management here at BB King's. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.